Back pain is one of the most universally debilitating and costly causes of disability in the United States.
Back pain.
Low back pain.
Low back pain.
Back pain.
Back pain, the fifth most common reason for doctor's visits in this country, by the way.
Studies show most of us will experience a bout of it at some point in our lives, but most don't realize it's not just about the pain. This is breaking the back pain cycle, an exploration of how we build a more resilient and stronger body without letting pain dictate everything, one movement at a time. So the frustrating thing about low back pain is that it's truly a multi-headed monster. It very seldom comes from one true cause. Now, rather than frustrating you, that should empower you, because for as many ways as there are to cause low back pain, that means there's equally as many ways to get out of low back pain. The one universally true thing with low back pain is that it almost always causes this experience called fear avoidance. You've probably experienced this. Like if you've tweaked your back, you know how scary it is. And initially you get these intense spasms. A lot of times you feel like you got to lay in bed for 3 days. And too often then people are ushered into the medical system where they go through MRIs, injections, maybe even an unnecessary surgery. Or best case scenario, you cautiously try to resume your normal activities, but you avoid spinal movement like the plague. You definitely do not deadlift. But the problem is the spine was designed to be moved like any other part of your body, and the muscles that move the spine can be strengthened, mobilized like any other region. So avoiding those things just leads to atrophy and detraining, which means if you don't use it, you literally lose it. So that's where movements like the reverse hyper can be extremely helpful for somebody recovering from low back pain or hoping to avoid an episode of low back pain. This is a movement where you can kind of lean into the problem, introduce spinal movement in a way that's often surprisingly pain-free for many people. So I always tell somebody that I want the crease of their hips where they bend from to be on the edge of the table. So Marcel, scoot this way a little bit. So what I want is as he comes underneath the table, I want his tailbone to be able to tuck and his legs to be able to go through and underneath the table. So this movement's a little scary for some initially and a little bit awkward because most movements in the gym, we slow down and try to really control. This is a little bit of a momentum type movement. So what I'm gonna have him start doing is gradually start getting it going with a little movement. And then as it gets bigger, go ahead and get bigger and bigger. Now I actually want you to start controlling it less, like let it pull you through. So more momentum, get a little more swing. There you go. So what's happening here is as he starts swinging underneath, keep going Marcel, his vertebrae are actually being kind of separated and decompressed, which makes this one of the only decompressive spinal movements in the whole gym. Normally when we do things like a deadlift or an RDL, go ahead and rest Marcel. Those are compressive movements, right? So those are taking my vertebrae and for good or bad, they are taking those two vertebrae and pushing them together. Here, the load is actually taking those vertebrae and separating them, which is why it's more comfortable than you might assume when you're dealing with low back pain. So go ahead and hop up again. First mistake I see people make is they're too high here and it's very uncomfortable. It's like digging into their stomach. So as long as you're right on the hip crease here, there's a rounded edge that makes it pretty comfortable for the most part. Go ahead and start gradually swinging again, Marcel. The second mistake you saw him do that first time around is he was trying to be very strict and controlled. Again, you have to kind of get those like hypertrophy style movements out of your head and start being a little bit comfortable with movements that entail some momentum, okay? Now, that being said, he is using his low back spinal erectors here, and he is squeezing his glutes at the top and getting a little bit of hamstring work as well. So this is a fantastic just posterior chain builder in general. You'll find that you get like a nice pump in your lower back, and that pump is a little bit of fatigue. It's also fluid filling those muscles. Again, if you're like cautious and fearful of your lower back, at least that might be initially kind of fearful or scary. But as you kind of get comfortable with that feeling, it feels like getting a pump in your biceps. It's actually a comfortable feeling and you know you worked something. So then the last mistake I see people make is on the dismount. So especially as he gets going, he's got a pretty good swing happening here. I see a lot of people just do a cold stop where they just absolutely hop off the machine and stop the movement. And because this thing's got momentum, then that thing smacks into their shins and that's extremely painful. I kind of taught him to slow it down like that. That way the strap can go slack and he can slide out of it without it hitting him in the shins. So the reverse hyper can be a major asset for you. Dispelling some of those psychological fears like we talked about, also providing that momentary decompressive relief, but also for a long-term training tool. The low back erectors, the glutes, and the hamstrings all receive an awesome training benefit from using this machine. So if you're somebody that's ordinarily healthy and just looking to prevent low back pain, try adding this in kind of towards the end of your posterior chain day, maybe a day where you train your glutes and hamstrings. 2 sets, 3 sets of 10 to 15. Obviously, if you've got some medical conditions or some acute low back pain, recovery from surgery, consult with your doctor or your physical therapist. So remember, there's no magic bullet when it comes to solving low back pain, and no one movement will cure your low back pain, despite what online gurus might tell you. However, any movement that helps you restore your faith in your spine, like this one, belongs in your program in some fashion. Join us next time as we talk about how spinal rotation can help you kind of build that armor and further improve your resilience if you're looking to combat low back pain.